Hey, fifth graders. Yesterday you started working on multiplying fractions, and today I want to make sure that you have some more practice in doing it. And we're going to do a page together. So I want you to make sure that you have page 424 from your student activity book. You can just pull out your page if you'd like I did. At the top it says multiplying fractions by whole numbers. Solve each problem. Use a representation and write an equation. That means that we have to use a representation and we have to write an equation for each problem. Always make sure you read your directions. Now in the classroom, I tell my kids that you always use a pencil for math, and that proves to be true in middle school and college. Math professors always want you to use a pencil. You'll notice that I'm using a pen today, and the reason I'm doing that is so it will show up dark enough that you can see what I'm doing. So let's look at our first problem. Janet is using a recipe for muffins that calls for 3/4 a cup of milk. She is going to make 3 times the recipe. How many cups of milk does she need? Well, let's start with what we know. We know that we could represent 3/4. You know, I'm not a great artist. If I were, then everything would look exactly the same. And I could color in 1, 2, 3 of those 3/4. That's 3/4. And I think you would agree, and we all knew how to do that. But she needs it 3 times. So if I'm making my representation, I'm going to make 3/4 3 times. That would be my representation. And a representation is a drawing, and yes, I know they should be all equal parts, but I'm not that good of an artist. So what I've done here is 3/4 plus 3/4 plus 3/4. That's repeated addition. But that's not very efficient. The more efficient thing to do is to say that I have 3/4 3 times. Or could I say 3 times 3/4? Yes, because of the commutative property, either one of these is correct. So this would be our representation. Have we done that? Yes. Do we have our equation? Yes. Now, how many fourths would that be? We know our denominators are going to be fourths because that's all we're dealing with. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. My answer is 9/4. But if you look at the problem right here, if I were to put this over a 1 to represent that I have 3 whole containers of milk, 3 times 3 is 9, and 1 times 4 is 4. So you can also, rather than just counting, do your 3 times 3, and my answer is 9/4. That's not my final answer because that's an improper fraction, so I need to think. 4 will go into 9 how many times? 2. 4 times 2 is 8. How many are left over? 1, because 8 plus 1 is 9. So my final answer is 2 1/4, and I want you to circle it. Your paper should look exactly like mine, only hopefully you're a little bit better artist and your rectangles look better than what I drew. So let's go on to number 2. Terrence went running on a 5/6 of a mile trail. He ran it 5 times. How many miles did he run? Well, we're first going to start with what we know. I know that if I'm using rectangles to represent the trail, I can divide it into 6. And to make it look a little bit better, let me grab a colored pencil out of my desk drawer right here. Always have them handy. And I'm going to represent 5 of those 6 by coloring in 5 of them. Okay? And then I would have to draw it 5 more times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Go on and be drawing your representation with me. If I'm making 6 sections, I'm going to put in 5 bars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And with your pencil, or if you have a colored pencil handy, I'm going to color in 5 of those 6 in each of these. Now, what do I have? I have 5/6 How many times? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. Okay? So one way I can find out how many sixths I have is I can count them. 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Or remember, I could think about anytime you turn a whole number into a fraction, you put the whole number over a 1, and I get 25 sixths. That's not my final answer. I need to think 6 will go into 25 how many times? 4, because 6 times 4 is 24. There's 1 left over, and the denominator stays the same. So my final answer is 4 1/6. If you need to pause to catch up, I want you... Are you kidding me? Now we're ready to look at number 5. Each day, Mitch's pet guinea pig eats 1/3 cup of red pepper. Goodness, that sounds like that might burn its mouth. How many cups of red pepper does Mitch's guinea pig eat in 5 days? Well, I'm first going to start with using a rectangle for my representation. And I know that 1/3 would be represented by coloring in one of the 3 sections. That represents the 1/3 cup that the guinea pig eats each day. But I want to know how many it eats in 5 days, which means I'm going to have 5 representations. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Each one of them will be divided into thirds. And I'm going to color in 1/3. So there's my representation. Now I have to write an equation. I have 1/3. How many times? 5. Okay. So how many thirds do I have? I know that the denominator's thirds because that's all I'm dealing with. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. But if I look at putting that 5 over a 1, I would have 1 times 5 is 5, and 3 times 1 is 3. That's not my final answer because that's an improper fraction. So I need to think 3 will go into 5 how many times without going over? 1 time, because 3 times 1 is 3. How many are left over? 3 times 1 is 3. Then I have 4, 5. 2 left over, and the denominator's the same. So my final answer would be 1 2/3. And we're finally here on our last problem. Remember, if you need to pause at any time to catch up your drawings and your equations and your solutions with me, it's fine to do that. At the store, Cecilia bought 2/3 pounds of 3 different cheeses. How many pounds of cheese did she buy? Well, I'm first thinking, how would I represent 2/3? I'm going to use a rectangle, my favorite source of representation, to stand for the cheese. And she bought 3 different ones, so I know that I'm going to have 3 representations. Again, forgive my art, you know I'm not a great artist. And on each one, I'm going to represent 2/3. So what's our equation? Our equation is going to be 2/3 times how many times? 3. Okay? So I know that my denominator is going to be thirds. That's what I'm dealing with. How many do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Once again, if I thought about doing 2 times 3, 6, and 3 times 1 is 3. It's an improper fraction. So now I need to think 3 will go into 6 how many times? 2. Are there any left over? No. And that's my final answer. So if you'll notice down here at the bottom of your student activity book pages, it tells you what skill we've been working on. Today, you have been solving problems that involve multiplying a fraction by a whole number. And this may look complicated, but it's really not. It's just repeated addition. If I have half of a sandwich, and you have half of a sandwich, and we put them together, we have 2 halves or 1 whole sandwich. So these representations help your brain understand how easy it is. What you need to do now is to go on to the next item number on today's Canvas page and see my directions about how you're going to turn this in. You're either going to be able to upload it on Canvas or send a picture. And then Mrs. Irvin and I will be able to tell that you have watched the video, and I just basically gave you the answer, so it should really be an easy 100 for you. Thanks for watching and following so closely.